Well, welcome back to part 3 of our Servicing an Atlantic 300 from 1946. The first video had to do with removing the shell. The second video had to do with servicing the reverse unit. And now this third video will deal with servicing the motor. So without further delay, let's get started and dive in. This part here with the wire coil and then this iron section is called a field. And if you may recall from your basic electronics, whenever you coil some wire around iron and you run a current through it, it creates a magnetic field. What that magnetic field does is that allows this section down here, also known as an armature, to rotate. And on the end of the armature, on one end of the armature is a plate with copper on it, and that's split into 3 sections. We'll see that soon. That is called a commutator. And on the other end of the armature is a worm gear, which is connected to the drive axle. And then the driving mechanism is transferred from this axle to this by the side gear, side rods, is what I'm trying to say. The other thing that's interesting about this first generation of motors is this part back here. This is called a brush plate, and they have these wire springs instead of a coil spring that actually hold the brushes up against the commutator. And so it's just a little different way of doing things. I think I'm going to go ahead and remove the Now the next thing I want to do is actually take the motor apart, and I'm going to clean that up and see how things look. So what we want to do first is remove the screws from the brush plate here at the back. I'm going to use my bigger screwdriver. I'm trying to do this from a vantage point that is good for camera angles, which makes it difficult for me to do it. So sorry if you can't see me taking a screw out. Okay, our brush holder is off. Our field is off. And now our armature is off. So what I'm looking for here is to see that this wear is even. There's no harder wear on the corners of these plates, because if there is, that means that the plates have actually cupped. So now we have a highly polished surface. And that will lead to better electrical connectivity. I also wanted to take note of these 2 brushes. This one is pretty worn. I'm going to see if I might have another one that's a little longer than that one. Okay. Since I've got this out, I'm going to go ahead and just clean some of the years of grease and grime off the field. Now this doesn't really make a difference in terms of how well the field works, but that's the old saying, anything doing well is worth doing right, or anything worth doing is worth doing right. So that's what I'm trying to do. Same here, just again clean some of the excess years of grit and grime. Now with these older style, with those springs are kind of in the way of cleaning out the areas where the brushes move, and you do want to get any residual oil out of there so that they slide back and forth. Whoa! You don't want to lose your Q-tip, which I just did. Now, something else that I want to draw your attention to is this device right here. Looks like a piece of belly button lint. And it's not. This is an oil wick, and you want to have one of those because we're going to go ahead and saturate that with oil once we put things back together, and that will help keep the engine properly lubricated. If your engine happens to be missing that, that's a part that you really should get replaced, because it's important to have it and important to the longevity of your motor. Wow, this is, yeah, gross. I think that a lot of these engines at one time or another were set up around Christmas trees or on the floor in a bedroom or whatnot, and they get, sorry about that, they get carpet fibers and animal fibers and different kinds of materials wrapped around wheels and axles and stuff, and so it's a good idea to get rid of that stuff if you can. Again, just helps things flow more easily, work better, and helps the engines be happy. And we're all about happy engines, happy trains. Take this a step further. Just a lot of stuff in here. Okay, good. Now, before I start putting the motor back together, here's something else that is good to pay attention to. With the worm gear out of the way, we have some wheels that should, in theory, roll pretty freely. And what I'm looking for is to see, do the wheels go this direction or do they wobble? If so, investigate why they're wobbling. And if not, wonderful. If they wobble, there could be a bent axle, there could be a tire that's actually loose. Both of those are possibilities. Now, I'm also going to go ahead and take the cover off the bottom of the rear axle. This is again, something you probably want to make sure to do, because in and around the gear is probably a whole bunch of compacted old grease. And we just want to go ahead and get that out of here. Well, this one's not too bad, actually. As you can see, you're going to go through a fair amount of Q-tips, so take stock out in Q-tips if you haven't yet. Or cotton swabs, or what's another word I've heard? Cotton buds, I think. Okay, there's a pretty cleaned up cover. Again, some of this grease and grime we're going to remove. And I'm going to stick my one of my tools down beside the gear here and just make sure there's no chunks of grease down in here. I see some little bits. Overall, that's a good sign when it rolls that freely. Okay, now we want to grab some fresh grease or lithium or whatever your choice. I'm going to put some on the gear here first. I'm sure that will get spread around. The next thing I want to do is add a drop on either side of the gear for the main axle. One drop there, one drop there. Work that in a little bit. Now I'm going to do something that may not be very popular, but I'm going to put a drop on the back side of the wheel, both sides, same up front, wish that Flyer had a way that you could get lubrication to the axles, because obviously what I'm doing is about the only way to get oil down to where the axle goes through the frame. Or it'd be nice if you could, you know, take them fully apart. On some of the later models you could do some of that, but yeah, it's a little hard to get lubrication down in there. So, but this stuff is running nice and free now, which is just what we want. And that's not what I wanted to do. Interesting. Suddenly seeing some more debris here. Apparently was hidden beside the wheel, behind the wheel. I don't know if there's any more. Okay, take number 2. Okay, so now we have the bottom part lubricated. Okay, now there were these washers here that came off the back of the armature. I want to make sure to put those back on. Next, I want to grease the armature. Now a lot of this is going to come off and end up in the gear cover at the bottom of the engine, just like the stuff we removed, but it's metal on metal, so I'll make sure there's enough on there. Oh, almost forgot. I also like to take a bit and put it right back here where those washers are up against. Just want to do everything I can to help this be a free rolling engine. More schmutz. Quite a bit of stuff and stuff. So just realized that the rubber insulator plate below the E reversing unit was twisted, so I just wanted to straighten that out a little bit. Okay, so now we just reverse how we pull things apart. The field on first. And the brush holder second. But before we do that, again, put just a tiny bit of grease on here. That'll do you. Oh, and my wire came off again. This wire is weird. It's like solder didn't stick to it. Might have to go back further, get some wire that's been hidden by the insulation. I don't know if that'll help or not, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Put the screws back in there. Go ahead and tighten those down. Now this is one point where reassembling the motor for an old style like this with single wire springs differs from the coil springs, and I would ask you to watch some of my other videos, which I've done several with the coil springs, on good ways to reassemble those. There'll be more coming as well. Okay, now what's interesting about these is in some ways it's easy to assemble these. Wait a minute. Yeah. So what I've found works is I grab the wire for the spring that's kind of sticking out the back. And I may need to help it. There we go. And I just pull that out like this, and put the brush in there, and that's all you do. So it's kind of handy. Okay, now we have our motor reassembled. And it's time to take care of this wire again. So let's see, I think we'll come back a little further this time. Sometimes the wire gets corroded and stuff up into the insulation a little ways, which I think that's what happened. And this might be aluminum wire. Huh. I'm not sure I've encountered aluminum wire before, but it sure looks like it's aluminum, which may also impact how well it does or does not take solder. But I'm gonna go ahead and do proper soldering technique as I understand it, and we'll try again. Alright, I'm going to try a different kind of solder here. Okay, now that's a much better solder joint than last time. Should have done that first time. Oh well. Now let's see how well our engine performs. Whenever you do this kind of repair, there's going to be a little break-in period, so you can hear the RPMs increasing, and that has to do with everything kind of syncing back up, brushes kind of finding their place again. But I'm encouraged, and I don't know how well this can be seen, but I'm not seeing the commutator moving back and forth. That means we've got a nice flat surface again. That's what we want. Okay, let's see how fast reverse is. Much faster. Remember how slow reverse was before? That's really a huge difference. Okay, so now time for a little bit of fine tuning. Let's see. And let's see if we get even better RPMs out of forward now. Reverse, forward. Okay. Well, my adjustment didn't make any difference, so I'm going to try a little bit more. Let's see if I go that. Oh, I think I went the wrong way. That's probably what's going on there. Reverse. part is still a little bit slower. Okay. Well, thanks so much for tuning in today. I hope you found that this video was helpful at kind of wrapping up the beginnings of maintaining your steam engines. You've now had some education on how to remove a shell, how to service the reverse unit, and how to service the motor. At this point, you want to reverse the steps that you've seen in removing parts, put everything back together, and see how well your engine runs and operates. Until next time, enjoy your trains, take care, God bless. We'll see you. Bye-bye.